Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock and we will begin the Tax Exempt Review Committee meeting. We have two joining us online, John Cosgriff and Bruce Grubb. We do have a quorum, and so we will begin our agenda. We have three items on the agenda. Number one is approve Tax Exempt Review Committee meeting minutes of 9/22/2020 and 9/28/2020. If there are any changes or corrections, please make them. Otherwise, we will accept a motion to accept them.
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from December 22 and September 28th, 2020.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number two, application pilot for Eagle Ridge Development. Jim, you can get us started off on this.
Okay, thank you. This is an application for a 15-year pilot from Eagle Ridge Development. I don't think you've seen an application like this before, and I don't think we've ever approved an application where it's been more of a new commercial development on the fringe of the city. However, when we last updated our policy, the policy did provide that this type of application could potentially be eligible for up to a 100% exemption in years 1 through 10 and up in 75% exemption in years 11 through 15. I included within our policy, it's on page 11, that thing, it needs to meet at least one of the following criteria. And if you look at those criteria, I think it maybe comes close but falls short on two of those criteria. And so essentially I'd like to get your input on this. Normally when an application comes in where a but-for test is required, we get the $5,000 fee and we send it off to our advisor and we see what they think. But if you feel this application might fall short or want to talk about it a little bit more, I'd rather that be done up front rather than ask the developer to go through all this analysis. So one of the criteria is that you have a significant new building construction with essentially 40,000 square feet of Class A office space as part of a mixed-use development. This particular application has 32,000 square feet of commercial. The exact condition of it isn't noted. The other would be to provide some type of small living units or an element of affordability. There are efficiency apartments in this development, but the expected rent is at $9.95 a month, and so it's not going to be the most affordable in town. So I guess the fundamental question I wanted to talk to the committee about was, do you feel the application meets the conditions of this significant commercial project, and should we go ahead and send it to the financial advisor for review to see if it meets the but-for test? Or if you don't, then to just have a recommendation to not approve the application. So I get some discussion on this, but maybe I would invite the developer to make any comments before our discussion. So, Mr. Bullis?
If you want to go to the podium on this side and just introduce yourself and then summarize it, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioners, first, can I take my mask off for the purpose of this? Or is this...
Absolutely.
When you speak, take it down, yes.
Thank you. I have a hard time hearing a little bit, and I want to make sure that you can hear me. Commissioners, my name is Jim Bullis. I'm here on behalf of Eagle Ridge Development, who is the developer and the owner, Bentley Place Properties, Tyler Brandt, with this application. Just so you would know where this property is, it's behind the new Eagle Ridge Office Park. It's about 100,000 square feet of brand new Class A office space that we built as kind of at the very front of this project. This is the second phase of a three-phase project. It involves almost a little over, in our estimation, about $102 million of construction. When we took a look at this property, we've worked with the City of Fargo Planning, and the City Commission has seen this already. And we did this as kind of an attempt to make a development that could be much more dense, hopefully to our benefit and also the city's. To give you an example, we own the adjacent property, the Cedars, the apartments directly to the south of this property. It's about $27 million worth of construction. If you were to take the traditional apartment type property, that's 13. If you were to take that traditional apartment construction and put it in this property, it would generate about $27 million of taxable value. We think we can get 4 times that on this property. Additionally, it cuts the special assessment cost from $3.84 down to $92 a foot. The city of Fargo would not need, in order to serve this almost 700 more residents than we would over normal traditional construction, the city of Fargo doesn't need to add 1 mile of sewer, stormwater, or road. So we think it's a win-win. The issue that we run into here is we have a big public plaza, some public art planned, we have a bunch of structured parking, underground storm detention in order to get the density that we need, and these things all come at a cost, and that's why we're here. We are a little bit short, as Jim pointed out, on the office space. This is the second of 3 phases. We'll definitely have more than the 40,000 by the time we're done. With regard to the affordable component, this is probably my shortcoming. We talked about this, and we fully intend that if the city were to allow us some tax breaks, that there will be an affordable component of this, and we're fully prepared to talk about that. So while we have these small units, we are expecting that a sizable portion of these will have to be affordable units. And if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them for the board at this time.
Okay, I have a couple of questions to start out, and then if anybody else, and especially online, if anyone has a question, just raise your hand. So Jim, my question for you is, are they eligible for a certain amount without us approving anything? And can you talk about that? And then also, my second question is, so they talk about affordable housing. Is there something we could work with them with to have them participate in some of the things that we're trying to do as far as affordable housing, or is that would that be a separate issue?
I think the answer to your first question, there's no specific automatic that they're qualified for, like a remodeling exemption, for instance, or often there's a 2-year exemption for new single-family housing. So those are the only 2 things that are typically automatic. With this policy, you could give it anywhere from a 1 to a 15-year, anywhere in between. They've proposed sort of a blended amount where it would start off low and then increase. Regarding your question of affordability, that is something the city could try to negotiate with the developer and get some commitment that a certain number of the units are going to qualify for Section 8 vouchers, for instance, and have rents more down in the $700 range.
So I'm just going to add, so I guess that's my question to you. Would you be interested? I do know that there's more hoops to jump through to get some of these affordable housing programs included in your project, but would you be willing to at least discuss that with us?
Commissioner, we absolutely would, and we anticipated that. We're not sure Section 8 is really what we're made for, but we think we can hit the same exact spirit of the Section 8 housing limits through the HUD vouchers and some other things that we can work with city staff in order to accomplish.
Okay, so then I'll let I apologize for hogging the microphone, but my question then is to Jim. So if they go through this process, could we do this negotiating at the same time, or how would that be accomplished? Because I guess I'll give you my perspective. I would have a tough time just approving this just the way it is. If you include low-income housing, to me that changes the character of the project from my perspective. So that's that's part of what we're trying to accomplish, is to get more, especially senior and low-income housing included in our city. We are short of that, and so I guess that's my editorial comment. But Jim, would you comment on that?
I think the best thing to do would be for us to meet and look at whether or not a certain number of the rents have to be low enough to where they qualify for HUD vouchers, or whether or not they have a certain number of units that are built under the low-income housing tax credit program that would not require HUD vouchers, but would require your rents to be really not as high as what's proposed with this project.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Jim?
Mr. Chairman, both this application and the one we'll hear next on the agenda are a little different than the kind of things we normally review at this panel, in the context that they're greenfield suburban type neighborhoods, and typically the philosophy is that we should not need to incent that type of development, as opposed to inner city or downtown things where there's complex challenges relating to tear downs and acquisitions and infrastructure. So I think both of these applications are filtered in my mind through that. Are we pushing our policies in a different direction now where we're incenting suburban development? I'm not making a judgment on that right now, and I'm just saying that's a challenge we're forced to deal with here. If this applicant, as well as the next one we're going to hear, can make a substantive argument, if we can address some of the points that Mr. Gilmore and you raise here on our bullet points, that there is some public good. And I can be convinced of things if a good argument can be made for public good or unique things such as expensive or unusual infrastructure design, public amenities, flood control related, like the one we talked about last month. And right now, I guess I share your opinions. This application to me looks probably not like the type of thing I would approve or support in its present form. But on the other hand, I recognize the need in our community and the way the trends of development are going towards more dense developments and the benefits financially, as you point out in that. And I think it's up to us to debate that. Is that the public good? Or should greenfield, virgin land developments just be on your own like you basically always have been? There is a little precedent, Jim, for the city has done 2 or 3 greenfield type TIFs in the past. We did an industrial park 20 years ago, and I think we did the zoo. And then more recently, the Border States Shields site. Those are the only 3 I could think of. Did those parties raise a compelling public need when we were debating those at that time?
I think those all had some unique characteristics. For instance, by the zoo and that section 22 out by Anderson Field, there were power lines that went along that 42nd Avenue corridor, and a lot of the TIF money was used to relocate those power lines as well as build that 42nd Street corridor. It was more of a public one. One of the other greenfield ones was the Fayland Industrial Park north of the landfill. That was seen as more difficult to build on simply because you're right next to a landfill and it wasn't probably the most desirable site. And so that helped with some infrastructure on that one. And then what was the third one you mentioned?
The more recent one, Border States.
Border States Electric, that was a primary sector job creation because that's a corporate headquarters. Those are viewed as primary sector jobs. And so we've, very commonly we've done those pilots for primary sector jobs. If we don't know, will there be any businesses with primary sector jobs? And, in this one, well, and the next one also, well, there could be, or there might not be. So it's, that's really kind of an unknown because they don't have any specific tenants. But you're right, these one of the fundamental questions is, would you rather have $26 million worth of development that pays taxes now or $74 million that pays taxes later? And so that's sort of part of the trade-off here, part of the decision.
And one last comment is I did get contacted by another developer who's done a lot of activity in the suburban areas, and they were expressing some concern over a potential precedent both of these applications might set. So I just caution us a little bit. So.
Jessica?
Yeah, my feeling is that as it stands right now, it would not work. It doesn't meet the 2 of the requirements. It's close, but as it stands, I would not personally vote to approve. The other, I'm excited that you would be thinking about working with the city to figure out that affordable housing, but affordable is by perception. So making sure that if there was something put into place that did come back to the committee for final approval, that it truly does meet the need of the individuals that must have affordable housing. And a degree of $100 to $200 is whether you eat or not, whether you can make it to a job or not. So the span of that is important, that it would meet and continue to meet the needs of the community. And so I don't think that forecast would be appropriate at this point right now, in my opinion.
Any other? We have some people online. Does anybody that are on the online have any comments? Mayor?
Well, Jim, I think you bring up a couple interesting questions. Somebody's got their mic on the online screen, if you can get that off. But it seems really hard when we want to increase density, and if we're going to keep pushing that, governor likes to increase density, those types of things. And then when you combine it, Jim, with the parking ramp, it always seems like the parking ramps are unaffordable in some ways, but yet you drive the density from doing that. And we've seen some successful projects that have parking lots mixed with density. One of the commissioners would vote for affordable housing in 15% of the project. He's read some national data that puts that out there. So if there's a mark, Jim, that might be the mark we're looking at. So would some projects do 15% affordable housing? And so I think you'd have to work with you and Jim Bullis to try to figure out a combination that would qualify for us. But to Jim's comment is this where we're headed or not? Because we really haven't decided what to do in the suburban area. We've always been focused on the downtown, the increased costs, those types of things. But I think a combination of when you ever put a parking ramp, office space in apartments, it probably is difficult to, I mean, because if you're going commercial, that sells. If you go apartment, that sells. But if you try to do a mixed use, and that's what we've been pushing as well. So I think we would have to revisit a little bit, Jim, of where is our focus and what would work, so.
Eric?
Chair, Jim, just for your general information, in terms of the precedent, the state statute for the TIF law, the urban renewal law, it was kind of an exception that came in 1989 that allowed for tax increment financing for underdeveloped commercial or industrial properties. So that was sort of specifically for something that might not be the traditional urban renewal. I just say that for your information.
And so if there's any other questions, I guess what I would like to do, I'll make a suggested motion and you can all tell me to jump in the lake if you think it's the wrong thing. What I would like us to do is to continue this proposal to our next meeting. And in the meantime, have the developers meet with the city staff and try to work something out as far as, because I think we are interested in low-income senior housing or something along that line. And I think we would be more supportive if that was included. If that seems acceptable, the hesitancy is if we go ahead and we proceed with this, you have to pay us, the city, a fee. And to me, at that point, I don't know if that's a wise thing to do. Is that kind of summarizing it, Jim, correctly? And so I guess that's my concern. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I might, Commissioner, we're so deep into this PUD already that the $5,000 fee isn't material. I mean, if it were something you were seriously, you were as a board going to entertain and talk about how this might look if we had the affordable component, I'd prefer to just pay you the fee and go ahead and do the but-for test, because I'd hate to do everything else and then find out we failed the but-for test.
Okay, and so, once again, I apologize for talking so much, but so then I guess I would change it and recommend that we proceed with the process of reviewing it with the outside financial review, but in the meantime, we continue to negotiate with the staff to try to work out some type of low-income housing. There's multiple programs, and so that's the other thing, and Jim's our resident expert on all that stuff, and so I think there's a lot of potential there, and I do agree with Jim talking about the downtown has been our focus, and part of that was because the properties it was very expensive to buy. Well, that shouldn't be our only focus, and I think we've heard a little bit of that you need to have opportunities for low-income housing spread throughout the city, and so I do think that's something that we would consider at this time too. So, all right, any other comments? And once again, I apologize. Go ahead.
Is there a chance that the but-for test would become invalid based off the number of changes or adjustments that could happen? I just don't want you to pay $5,000 and end up finding out that it was so materially different that now we have to redo it.
I mean, I think the best approach would be to try to work out a business plan that seemed to make sense for the city and the developer, and then do the but-for test. If we were to do it right now and then we change everything, then yeah, the result becomes null and void.
Chairman, I just want to remind the public that current taxes are $37,000, and when the project would be done, it'd be over $1 million. So that's why, as tax-exempt committee, we have to look at this closely, because it could be added taxes to our tax roll, but at the same time, it's how do we get there? So that's a challenge we all stand of, how to get your development going and how to work equitably within the system. So thank you.
Certainly.
So once again, I'll try to repeat what'll happen. So this, if we make a motion and then this goes ahead, it will still come back to us and we will vote on it and we will know the answer to these questions.
Yeah.
And then after that, we will vote again, then it'll go to the city commission. So just so everyone kind of knows the order of how it will go.
Okay. Yeah, we'll continue to work with the developer then.
That's awesome.
So Dave, do you have a motion on the table, or do you?
We do not have a motion, and so if any further discussion, otherwise we will accept a motion.
Because I guess I would move that we have our team work with it and see if it comes up to a but-for evaluation. If you do the work together and think it could pass that, Jim, then we would push it forward to a but-for test.
Okay, we'll do that.
So we have a motion by the mayor. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good, thank you. We'll move on to number 3, the last item on our agenda, application for TIF for EOLA. Jim.
Yeah, this is kind of a preliminary review. What our TIF policy works is we'll actually take this to the city commission on November 16th for their initial review to see if they want us to work on a renewal plan and development agreement. And then it would go back to this committee for a recommendation whether or not that TIF agreement would be approved and the terms of it, and then on to the city commission for final approval. However, since we had this meeting today, I thought it would be good to just tell you a little bit about the project. The developer is acquiring 4 of the softball diamonds at Anderson Field. They're projecting a development that would be worth up to $150 million. The TIF request would be for money that would go towards a parking ramp, and youth facilities, and some support for senior affordable housing. I'm not looking for any action on this, but if the developer would like to give a kind of a brief overview of the project, and I thought there would be a good opportunity for you to answer some of the questions that you might have, because this application, like the previous one, is different in that we're out in an edge of the town where there aren't as many development impediments as we see in what the types of TIFs that you've approved in the past. So, Todd, do you want to talk about the project a little bit?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I'm Todd Burning with Epic Companies. And I also have Dave Leaker, who's called in, and Matthew Pike from Fargo Housing Authority. And we're in the process of closing on the land, Anderson Fields, which is up on 45th. And really, what you have in front of you is a starting point, just to try and get a scope together. You've got some renderings that are, the boxes are accurately reflecting what we plan on putting there. We've already been working with the city engineers on streets, public, private, et cetera, like that. But the more important thing is, we've committed to at least a 4-acre green space for public use. And so what are we going to do with that space? And our goal is to work with the Park District, and that's why Dave Leaker is on here, and create as many amenities as we can that work to bring the level of all 50 acres up. And I think that's really important, and it ties into the Convention Visitors Bureau, it ties into the Park District. And then the other component is we are a HUD developer. We're on our 3rd HUD project, and I've been sharing my vision and thoughts collaboratively that we have with the Park District, with Matthew Pike, Executive Director of Fargo Housing. And, what can we do with some TIF capacity there? How can we leverage that? And Bank of North Dakota is very interested in that as well. We've been partners with them on many projects. Some of you are familiar with the lights out in West Fargo, which is a greenfield TIF project. And Bank of North Dakota was very, very instrumental in that, and I think they could even play a bigger role here. And so we're all working together, and so I've approached the city with Dave and the Park District and said, what kind of package can we put together that would raise our value from X to X plus Y of a taxable value, and how can we put amenities out there that, sure, they will support the complexes out there that are mixed use, and our mixed use is commercial apartments and condos. We plan on doing quite a few condos there. The Maxfield study came in very, very strong for condos in the sky, basically, and Fargo, that's 7th, 6th, and 5th story. So that's a combination of what we're looking at doing, and as Jim Gilmore said, this is preliminary and kind of an education. You guys educating me on what we need to do together with the Park District and Fargo Housing Authority and others. And Convention Visitors Bureau, I can't leave them out either, because they're looking for more attractions. And if we can create what Dave Leaker has part of his vision, I think on a year-round basis, it's going to help put heads in beds, which during this time isn't an easy thing to do. And so that's the other part of it that we're looking at. And if there's any questions for myself or Dave as part of the presentation, maybe Dave, you've got something to add as well.
Any questions? And Dave, if you want to start us out with some comments, that'd be great.
No, thank you, Dave. Yeah, I'd just like to add on to what Todd was speaking about, the adjacency to our complex and youth hockey arena out there, along with the curling club and the zoo, could provide, some nice attractions for the city of Fargo. And with the direct, being directly adjacent to an entertainment district, it kind of puts everything in one spot out there. We've also been working with engineering on a possible right away from 42nd Street over to 45th Street, and we're still working out the details on that. And also redeveloping that complex. Right now, with the sale of the 4 West fields, we currently have 4 East softball diamonds and 4 full-size large Legion baseball fields. And we're working with the local baseball groups in town, Post 400, Post 2, and also Fargo Youth Baseball, and see what we can do to redesign that complex and kind of make it state of the art with possible all turf fields out there, which, as everybody knows, what the Squirt International brings to Fargo, we could do the same thing with baseball in the summertime. So we think it's a great project. We like what Epic's been able to accomplish throughout North Dakota and especially West Fargo. So we're looking for a great partnership.
Just a couple quick questions. Thank you, Dave, for those comments. So the thing that I like the best, the last 2 proposals, both of the companies are local people. And so I think we're very fortunate. I think that is a great sign. So I'm very appreciative of that. And if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the parking ramp and then the low-income housing, and I wish you could show this map on the overhead. Basically, the location is near the hockey arena, the Park District hockey arena, and the curling thing. So can you just talk a little bit about that? Thank you.
Yeah, in our TIF, I envision, some type of phased process with the TIF, and, where we've proposed to locate the parking ramp, and the parking ramp would be, completely free to the public and be supported by the commercial and residential revenue streams for maintaining it. So it might be a little bit different model than what you're used to. And we push that as far north and east of our 16 acres as possible. So it's basically right outside the back door of the Southwest Youth Arena. Yeah, you can see it there in the top left, kind of different color. The purple, green, and yellow means condos, apartments, commercial, top to bottom, as a starting point of 7-story structures. But the other one there is a parking ramp very similar to size and scope of what we just built out at the lights. And so that would be as close to Dave's baseball fields as we can get. It would be obviously close to our 4-acre park. And it would also support Southwest Arena and the curling club, which, as we all know, their overflow usually ends up in the zoo parking lot. So it's really to take that space and create parking spaces that turn over 2 or 3 times, and make some sense at night, make some sense during the day, make some sense for the workers, make sense for people living there, people entertained there. So that's I don't know, Dave, if I answered your question or not, but.
That's excellent. The other thing I'd like to point out is the collaboration with all these different groups. I think we're getting the most bang for our buck from the city's perspective, especially when you have the Park District benefiting, and all. I just think we're very fortunate. And so I really like that model where you're working with a lot of different groups.
If I could comment on that, thank you. Appreciate that. And Matthew Pike may step in or not. We have worked on affordable housing, and that component, the buildings farther to the east are off the main drag of 45th, and it's just a nice logical place where they could go. Or if the timing doesn't work out, they could end up to the one right on 45th by the parking ramp, kind of across the Amber Valley that'll be extended. So lots of options, and it's really based on timing of Matthew Pike and his board and constituents of when they want to engage in it. But we both, along with others, feel that affordable housing doesn't need to be off to the side. It can place people where other people are as well and enjoy public amenities firsthand. So we're a big believer in that. We've shown it. We're building the nicest affordable housing project in the state right now in Minot with resiliency money from the flood. And I just think with people like Joel Mansky at HUD and stuff, it's really important to continue that. We were part of that February dialogue before COVID when we had everybody in here to work on Lashkowitz and what we can do there. And so I'm a big believer in that, and we do it all the time. So that addresses the affordable. Then the part about collaboration, it's with youth groups, it's with everybody, and how do we, it's like a swimming pool, how do you build it? Okay, well, we get it built, now how do we maintain it? And we've really demonstrated that at the lights with different revenue streams and, with gaming and advertising and grants. We'll roll into some hybrid of a operational management deal with the park district and charitable organization and work through that so we can sustain it and program it and make it, very vibrant. And I think we've proven that a couple times, and this would be the next step. And it's an asset that Fargo doesn't have. This is not going to be a bunch of concrete. This is going to be more like a very mini Central Park. And I think some of those amenities are in your packet on that back page. And that was really from our first charrette, and which is a little hard to do during COVID, but we're getting there. And we're open to lots of input from lots of groups, and we've been getting it.
Jim?
Yeah, Todd, I have two kind of financial questions. Number one, the developer is buying this land from the Park District, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that amount public knowledge at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. We close sometime the first week in January.
So that's one thing that's important to me is the developer is buying this land from another unit of government who can use that money for the public good.
Yep.
And secondly, on the conceived or the conceptual payment schedule, is it like a 10 to 15 year flat TIF, or is it 50% for 5 years, 75%? Kind of what's your vision on that?
Well, I think we're flexible, because we can take chunks, and we visited with Kent Costin a little bit, and it's who holds the debt. There might be some option there too that works better for the city and can solve it. And I just think with the city and ourselves and banks that have been involved with this before, and Bank of North Dakota, there's probably some options. And maybe one phase is this way and the other phase is the other way. And, I put 80-20 on here, but this is how it's got to be.
Okay.
It can definitely be in chunks.
Another thing, if I'm correct, this land has really not in any recent history paid any property taxes because it's been owned by the government, right?
Correct. Its basis
So
is basically
there's
zero.
some unique ones, this one versus the prior application. I'm not picking a winner or criticizing one or the other, but this one has some interesting components that are intriguing and I think worth digging into.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we will accept a motion.
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion, Mr. Chairman. This was just an informational item for you.
Okay.
Well, then we don't need a motion.
No motion, but they are proceeding with the but-for test, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
if the city commission gives the approval to go for the but-for test. So that's the next step,
Yeah.
or the next hurdle, if you will.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, it is 1:33. Thank everybody for attending, and we are adjourned.